Well, good morning, folks. It is Saturday morning, June 19th here. Juneteenth, John, now a federal holiday in the United States of America. Welcome to the Perfect Spiral Podcast, episode number, oh my God, I lose count. 17?
I think it's 17.
17! We're here. My name is Joe Miglio, and I have my co-host John McCarthy here. I'm actually very humbled to be here today because I almost died yesterday, but you know, that's neither here nor far between. We'll get into that at the beginning of the pod. Today is a day where we will talk about hitting, we will talk about smacking, we will talk about taunting, we will talk about prison, and we'll talk about death. Because all of those things are involved in the top 11 of players today that we will talk about when we discuss the top 11 linebackers. John, I am ready for today. It is a beautiful Saturday morning. I have the pod. I have 2 parties to go to after this today. I was at a party last night. Tomorrow's Father's Day. So if you're a dad listening to this show, happy Father's Day. We are ready to rock on PSP. Let's roll. John, throughout that whole thing, you were just laughing at me as I was doing this.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Because you're just like, I had a party last night. I have 2 parties today.
Well, I tell people about my life, you know? Like, you know, you got to give the people, like, a very comfortable, intro so they could, like, kind of, you know, you don't have to tense up. They're going to relax a little bit. It's like, okay, it's Joe. It's a normal guy. It's Saturday. He doesn't want to be around these parties today, but he is. I'm rocking sunglasses inside as we're doing this
You are.
podcast.
I feel like I should take a picture of this and put it on the Twitter.
You definitely should, because... Am I posed? Did you take a picture?
I got it. I got a good one.
So, welcome everyone. Joe Miglio here. John McCarthy, my co-host. PSP, Perfect Spiral Podcast, episode number 17. Please be sure to follow, like, subscribe, download on any podcast you listen to, any podcast site. We got Google, we got Apple, we got Spotify, we got Pandora now, we got Deezer, Stitcher, Buzzsprout. Anywhere you get your podcasts, we are there. If you haven't been paying attention, we are in the middle of our Legends series covering over the summer. John, we have gone running backs, wide receivers, corners, and today we are doing linebackers.
Linebackers was a fun one to do.
Linebackers was a fun one to do. I was actually very surprised about some of the guys that were on this list.
Yes.
I was very excited. Some of the guys that just missed the list too, I was like, I wish we were going to discuss them, but we're not because they ain't good enough. They ain't good enough.
Can we go back to how you almost died, though?
Yes, sure, you can. I got into an accident yesterday.
Oh, my God.
On the way to a barbecue that was work affiliated. Absolute disaster. Left at 12:30, and being the kiss-ass employee that I am, went to the city to get pastries at Magnolia's Bakery because that's what I know my boss likes, their banana pudding. So I went to go get that.
That is really good, the banana pudding.
Right. So
It's
I went to go get that. Took about 40 minutes to get into the city. Then we left. My wife's in the car with me. We're driving to Jersey, and there's massive traffic, right? So we're going back and forth. We're arguing. We're doing the whole married thing. You know, she's yelling at me. I'm yelling at her. We're in the car, and I kid you not, we're sitting on US 3 going into 46, and it's like moving traffic, right? And this guy in the left-hand lane, he's going like 2 miles an hour. So it's like 15 feet in front of him, so I moved to the left lane because I needed to get in the left lane anyway, right?
Yeah.
So we're moving traffic. We start to slow down, and I hear right in the back of my car. And I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. So I get out of the car, and this guy's all disheveled. He's got a fucking guinea tee on. He's bleeding from his lip and his fuck on his shirt. So tells me his head was probably down when he hit us. He was falling asleep or was looking at his phone or something. And he's a mess. He was probably impaired. I don't know. But that's my phone going off. For the pod, I forgot to put that on silent. So
I'm glad you're all right and Hannah's okay.
yes,
It's just
we're both fine.
Because Joe texted me yesterday, and I'm like, because I asked him when we were doing the pod, and he's like, actually, when you texted me, I got into an accident. I'm like, oh, fuck, my text caused him to get into an accident.
It did.
He goes,
I realized
no.
how I wrote that, and I was like, oh my God, he probably thinks he caused my accident. No, you did not.
Oh, thank God. Well, I'm glad you're okay. Accidents are scary.
We spent it took us 5 hours to get to the party.
How late were you to the party?
It was supposed to start at 2:30. We got there at 5:15.
Oh, my God.
Yep.
What about the pastries? Were they okay?
John's worried about the pastries. Was the banana pudding good? Yes, it was fine.
Really?
I'm glad. I'll tell the banana pudding that you were very concerned about it.
I mean, that's the question everybody's wondering, right? Is the pastries okay?
It was that, and I got a cake, right? So it was the cake. I was like, oh my God, the cake's going to melt. Cake actually ended up being fine. So, but what are you going to do?
Jesus Christ.
So before we start today, John, I want to let our viewers know and let the podcast community know and let the football community know
Oh, boy.
that fantasy football coverage is going to start August 1. We're right around the corner from fantasy football season. You have the master of second place, myself, fantasy football career, master of second place, knows how to get to the title game and always loses the title game. Fuck you, Derrick Henry. Fuck you, Todd Gurley. Anybody else? Jameis Winston, you're on my shit list too. There's a bunch of guys that have absolutely screwed me over the years in fantasy football. John, on the other hand, John is the master of trading, and whatever team John drafts is never the team that John ends up with on the day the season is over.
But wait, hold on.
Never.
I think you're leaving out the most important part about
Which
me.
is what? That you trade all your draft picks in keeper leagues?
I've been to the championship game 7 times.
Oh my God.
I'm a 5-time champ.
I will say this. If you want to know what quarterback to draft that nobody's taken, John's your guy. For 2 years in a row, John has pinpointed the quarterback that was going to break out, and he's nailed it 2 years in a row. He told me about Lamar Jackson before Lamar Jackson had his MVP season, and last year he told me about Kyler Murray. So I'm going to try to squeeze out of John what quarterback he's gonna pluck from his lips this year.
Oh, I already know, but we'll save it.
If you say Trevor Lawrence, I will.
It's not Trevor Lawrence.
I will kiss you. If you want our fantasy football coverage, and you will, trust me, you will. We're gonna get here's what the people don't know, John. Here's what the people don't know, right? And we've been so nice to have over 600 downloads so far across all of our episodes, right? Here's what the people don't understand. We're not even hitting our stride yet. Like, our express lane is fantasy football and the actual season. Like, off-season and the Legend Series, all the stuff that we've covered so far, we're just getting our feet wet.
Oh, it's just a tip. We haven't even hit the tip of the iceberg.
Like, this is like, I can't wait. But I wanted to get you guys excited. I hope you guys are excited. We got a little bit over a month until FFA season starts. Fantasy football advice. Let's go. I am psyched for some FFA.
He's already ready.
But until then, we have some linebackers to talk about.
We do.
So, as per usual, we are going to count down our top 11 of linebackers. And before we do that, I will bring to you the people that were spoken about and who were not discussed in our top 11. Guys like Patrick Willis, Harry Carson, Brian Urlacher, Dick Butkus, Derek Thomas, Sam Huff, DeMarcus Ware, Bobby Wagner, Kevin Green, Chuck Howley, Chuck Bednarik, and Willie Lanier. I am going to save numbers 12, 13, and 14 for our Just Miss cut later in the episode. But we are going to start at number 11. And number 11, is unfortunately a gentleman we'll have to talk about posthumously because he passed away recently. John is handling the odds this week. I am handling the evens this week. John, number 11 goes to the great all-time player. Did he come from Hawaii? I don't even know. But he is a phenomenal football player. California. Played the majority of his career with the San Diego Chargers.
Played his college career at USC.
That is
Junior Seau.
Junior Seau. Rest in peace, Junior Seau.
Comes in with a raw score of 110.
110.
So Junior Seau, when I first started watching football, I kind of caught him at like almost the tail end of his career. But he was always like a staple within the Chargers organization, right?
Absolutely.
He played him.
He was the
40.
guy.
Yeah, he was the guy. He played until he was 40. Hard-hitting linebacker. This guy was no nonsense. Let's go through his accolades. He is a Hall of Famer, 12-time Pro Bowler, 6-time All-Pro, and a 1994 Walter Payton Man of the Year. He played. This is crazy. So he actually had a couple of people don't realize that he did have a short stint in Miami. And then he was.
I didn't even remember that.
I don't remember that either. And then he did have the stint with the near perfect New England Patriots. Never won a Super Bowl in his career.
But he was out. He went to one.
He went to one.
Near perfect Patriots.
Yeah, and we will get to them eventually. 56 sacks in his career. Over 19. Oh my God! If you want to combine both solo and like total tackles, over almost 3,000 tackles in his career.
Yeah.
He was all over the field. This guy was absolutely fantastic.
You know what's interesting when I was doing the statistics on these guys is you had two types of linebackers, right? You had the linebackers who were either sack getters or you had the linebackers that were like coverage guys, tackle guys, got picks, all this whole nine. And the distinction, there was not really one guy on this list who was great at both. They really excelled at really either one.
Yeah.
And the majority of them excelled at the tackling and the interceptions and the fumble recoveries, all that. There were a few guys on this list, couple not. Kevin Green was one, who really excelled at getting to the quarterback as a linebacker, right? Mm-hmm. And it's almost like having another down lineman. And when I was doing the list, I was almost considering putting them with the defensive linemen, but no, they were linebackers, right? They just excelled at getting to the quarterback.
Yes.
And even there are linebackers today who excel at getting to the quarterback, and there are linebackers today who excel at going into coverage and making tackles and better against the run, all this other stuff. Junior Seau, I feel like, was good at both, but he was such a great, like you said before, an amazing tackler. Mm-hmm. You couldn't juke Junior Seau. You couldn't get around him. He was just a guy that if you met him at the line of scrimmage, 7 out of 10 times, you were going to get tackled at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
He just knew how to wrap up. Loyal guy. He played for a franchise that didn't go to the playoffs that much during his tenure there.
No,
and then he went to the end of his career with New England, and he won 4 years in a row, got Super Bowl once. But the other 3 times he was in the playoffs with the Patriots, they lost in the first round. That was during that time where the Patriots were like winning 12, 13 games every year, but were always getting bounced by teams like the Jets or the Ravens or the Colts or the Steelers. And then it wasn't until like 2014, it was weird, right? They had like that 10-year hiatus where they like always got to the playoffs, but never did anything in the playoffs.
And people forget that because of I don't want to go too deep into it, but people forget that because they had like 2 separate dynasties.
Yeah, it was just wild.
Yeah.
They won 3 out of 4 years, then took like a 10-year break while winning 12 games every year.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they went back to winning what they were doing.
I will say this about Junior Seau, though. In order to be a player that Bill Belichick wants, you have to be a very smart player, very cerebral player. So that goes to a testament to him that he was just so smart at position that even though he didn't play many games with the Patriots towards the end of his career, still his knowledge was good, and he helped build that defense towards the end. And
it's funny because unfortunately he did pass away due to the CTE issues.
Yes, and you know what? Let's talk about that for a second because he was the first player I think that brought CTE into the forefront.
He was the first big name player that died from it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it brought forth the importance of helmet safety and
Yeah.
research for players who are still struggling with CTE.
Well, it's funny. When he died and it was kind of brought up, people like scoffed at it. They're like, concussion, like CTE. It was like kind of like being chirped around a little bit around the NFL circles, but it wasn't like a big deal.
Yeah.
And then when they did the autopsy and they found out like how much his brain had
far advanced
shriveled up.
Yes.
It was alarming. Mm-hmm. It was really, really alarming. And that's why you see today the NFL crack down on. So like when guys lean with the crown of their helmet and they're looking down and they're not looking up, it gives you chills, right? Because
it's dangerous.
It's dangerous, and it's been proven to be dangerous. Like there's science behind the danger, right? And it's just like, if you're that dumb to still do that after, and I understand, listen, I've played football before, you've played football before.
Yeah, of course.
When you're making a tackle, it's a split-second decision, right? So you're not really thinking in that moment in time. You're just trying to get the guy down. But you have to learn the right, if you keep doing it consistently,
proper technique,
repetition, and it's just some of these guys, they still, you would think they see a guy like Junior Seau and they see how he died and they see the science behind it, like, oh my God, I don't want to turn out to be like that.
Yeah.
And some of these guys are still doing it that way. It blows my mind.
And he wasn't the last person either.
No,
so,
not at all.
It's definitely
not at all. But Junior Seau, if you're listening up above, my friend, you are number 11 on the Perfect Spiral linebacker list. Junior Seau, Hall of Famer, coming in at number 11. Now, number 10. This man, a lot of people you might not know of him. I really didn't know of him. I looked and see if there was any film on him. This was pre-YouTube. But I did see some statistics. Played from 1953 to 1965. He goes by the name of Joe Schmidt. And he played on the Detroit Lions. The last time the Lions were good, ladies and gentlemen, is when Joe Schmidt was on the team. He played as a linebacker. Joe Schmidt was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1973. He was drafted in the 7th round.
I was just looking at that. I was just going to say.
Seventh rounder, pick. John. 7th round. He went to the College of Pittsburgh. And he is as follows. He's actually still alive.
Wow.
89 years old as of right now.
Holy shit.
He played for the Detroit Lions his whole career. He is a Hall of Famer, as I mentioned before. He is a 10-time Pro Bowler, an 8-time All-Pro, a 2-time NFL champion, won 2 NFL championships with the Detroit Lions in the 50s, and he's part of the all-1950s team. 24 career interceptions, 2 touchdowns, did not record tackles during this era, did not record sacks during this era, so unfortunately we're not able to get those numbers for you, but just based off of this alone, in 1955, he had 8 fumble recoveries by himself.
And that's the only stat that's actually tracked here is the fumble recovery.
It's wild. He had 8 fumble recoveries in 1955. He was an All-Pro 7 out of the 8 seasons, or 8 out of 9 seasons in a row, from 1954 to 1962. In the playoffs, he won NFL championship in 1953, and he won in 1957. In 1957, he had 2 interceptions in the NFL title game for the Lions, so he had a big part to play in there. And he, like I said before, he played on a Detroit Lions team the last time they were actually good. He went to the playoffs 3 different times with the Lions, won 2 NFL titles, was part, as we mentioned, was part of an all-1950s team. So Joe Schmidt is a guy who, for all intents and purposes, if we were sitting in his house right now, he'd have a whole bunch of accolades in his cabinet.
Yeah.
And you know why I like doing this? Part of the reason I like doing this Legend series.
Because of guys like
this.
Come up.
I don't know about guys like this.
Yeah, I don't either.
And the way that we get our list is we look at different variant lists and we kind of combine them together based off other guys that our knowledge that we know, and we do a raw score of every single player. And some of these guys, you get the numbers and you're like, oh my gosh. like, I can't believe he's that good.
Yeah.
John, you have a guy you're going to talk about later who you're like, oh my God, I can't believe he's that high.
Yeah, there was a guy that I
Right?
really liked looking
And Joe
at.
Schmidt's a guy for me. I'm like, oh my God, like, he's higher than Junior Seau, right? And he didn't play on a perennial winning team.
No.
He didn't. So his,
And he didn't play that long of a career.
right.
Either.
So his stats really carried him. So he was really that good, right? If you want to say there's one flaw with our ranking is we really focus on having winning players really rank high on our list, right? That may be like our one flaw with our list if you had to critique it.
But it fits because in order to be you need to be on a winning team.
Winning players are in the whole
winning.
thing.
Yeah, like somebody like Patrick Willis. I thought Patrick Willis was gonna be so high on the list, and Patrick Willis was dead last.
And his team was good.
Yeah, and he was a 7-time Pro Bowler, a 4-time All-Pro. Like
He was dead last on our list.
and it's crazy, you know.
He was dead last by a wide margin too.
Yeah, he only had like a raw score of like 52.5.
So, but Joe Schmidt coming in at number 10, a Detroit line, second Detroit line, I believe, third. Joins Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson
Yes.
as the other two Detroit line members to make our list. And it's interesting, you know, I didn't think about this. At the end of this, I want to count which teams have the most players on our top 11.
I think so far it's the Steelers.
It's definitely the Steelers.
I think the Steelers are the
And they are definitely represented again today. So,
100%.
John, let's head over to number. This one is astounding to me.
So
is he the first player that isn't in the Hall of Fame to make our list, or is it the second?
No, I think he's actually the second because there was a wide receiver that wasn't in the Hall of Fame. I forgot who it was.
Oh, Reggie Wayne.
Reggie Wayne, not in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
So the number 9 player on our list with a raw score of 114, T-Sizzle, Terrell Suggs.
T-Sizzle!
So we actually...
Can't believe he made it!
You know what's funny is... So I'll say this about Terrell Suggs, right? So Terrell Suggs... This is a player that we actually got to watch, right? So
oh my God, he was so good.
He was fantastic, but he was
always overshadowed.
Always overshadowed by Ray Lewis his entire career.
And Ed Reed.
Always overshadowed. But people forget just how fucking dominant Terrell Suggs was. So while Ray Lewis wasn't much of a pass rusher, right? Ray Lewis was very much a traditional linebacker.
Right.
Very good tackler. That was his game. Terrell Suggs is more of a versatile player, right?
Yes.
So Terrell Suggs ended his career with 139 sacks.
Wow.
But I'll go through his accolades really quick before we get to the numbers. So he's a 7-time Pro Bowler, a 1-time All-Pro, a 2-time Super Bowl champ, a 2011 Defensive Player of the Year, and a 2003 Defensive Rookie of the Year. Terrell Suggs played a very long career. I mean, he had that end stint in Arizona and Kansas City. He played 18 years.
Wow.
He was fantastic.
Wow.
And he didn't miss many games either. But Suggs, like we were saying, he was wasn't much of a tackler.
Right. It was more of almost like a down lineman.
Yes, he was almost like a down lineman. Wasn't much of a tackler, but he was more of a complete player, I think, than Ray Lewis, right? Like,
really?
Yes, because when you look at, like I was saying, with Ray Lewis, he was more of a tackler. When you look at Suggs, he was more of all over the field. He played better in coverage. He was more of a pass rusher. So we got to see him play on those really dominant Baltimore defenses.
Oh,
especially that one that won the Super Bowl with Joe Flacco.
We forget how good those there's going to be, and Terrell Suggs is going to go into the Hall of Fame, I believe, one day.
Oh,
and
of course.
If Terrell Suggs was in the Hall of Fame on our list, he would be number 6.
Yeah,
he would go up to number 6.
He's going to go into the Hall of Fame. It's not even
absolutely.
a question.
And that defense is going to have 3 guys from it on the Hall of Fame: Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, and Terrell Suggs, and maybe even Haloti Ngata.
Yeah.
If they feel like if the committee feels like getting spicy there.
That defense that year, I mean, Joe Flacco was also like otherworldly in those playoffs.
It was really weird how good he was.
Yeah, he was. What did he have, like 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions? It was
nuts.
some crazy number.
Right.
But that defense was so fucking good.
It was really good.
And
it was really good.
It was fantastic. And Terrell Suggs, man, we got to watch him for a while, and he was even dominant that last year when he played in Arizona. He was good.
You know, he's one of those guys where you always, even as a fan, you're always like, where's Suggs? Like, when you're watching the game and your team's playing him, you're like, where's Terrell Suggs? Yep. Why are we not double teaming Terrell Suggs? Why are we not going away from Terrell Suggs, right? You always, as a fan, you're like, what the hell is wrong with these teams? Why are they going at T Suggs? And he always makes them pay.
Always
every single time makes them pay.
Every single time.
You know, and it's like, Every time there seemed to be a big sack that was needed, Suggs got it.
Yep.
Every time there needed to be a big interception, Suggs got it. Every time there was a pass deflection at the line of scrimmage, that was a big one. Suggs got it.
He always came up huge in the playoffs. Too.
Always clutch player.
Like
Clutch
unbelievable.
player.
Yeah, and just a consummate pro, like an absolute pro's pro.
He was not afraid to speak his mind either.
No, he was not.
He was like a trash talker too, a little bit. He was really. I love Terrell
because
Suggs.
he knew he was going to smack you in the mouth, and he
Oh,
just
my
recently
God.
retired. It wasn't even that long ago that he retired.
He retired after he won Super Bowl with the Chiefs.
Was that?
Yeah, 2019. He started in Arizona, got released, and then signed with Kansas City.
That's right.
And then they won the Super Bowl, and then he retired.
Because I was okay. That's right. Because when I was looking at his numbers, I was wondering why he had 2 Super Bowls, and I forgot that he was on that Kansas City team. Because when I looked at Ray Lewis had 2, but Ray Lewis won that one early in his career
with 2000
with Trent Dilfer, and then the one in the end of with Joe Flacco. Okay.
Right.
All right, that makes sense.
So T Sizzle, Terrell Suggs coming in at number 9. We're gonna do number 8, and then we're gonna take a small break, and we're gonna come back. Number 8, part of the 85 Bear. Talk about dominant defenses. Maybe the most dominant defense ever. Maybe the most dominant defense ever. The 1985 Chicago Bears. The representative of the 1985 Chicago Bears on this defense, Mike Singletary. Mike Singletary, nicknamed Samurai. Did not know that. Little interesting note there. Inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1998. Was drafted in the second round. Went to Baylor. Was a head coach for a little while.
Horrible head coach.
Unsuccessful, to say the least. But Mike Singletary did a lot. He was a 10-time Pro Bowler, 7-time All-Pro, won Super Bowls. We mentioned 1985. Part of the All-80s team. He was the 1985 Defensive Player of the Year. So he was the Defensive Player of the Year on the 85 Bears. Think about how good he was that season. 1988 Defensive Player of the Year. 1990 Walter Payton Man of the Year Award. Played the Chicago Bears from 1981 to 1992. In 1985, he was not really a sack guy. Only had 3 sacks in that year, 3 fumble recoveries, only had 1 interception. He was more of a coverage linebacker. And Singletary, it's funny, Singletary was one of the guys that we had to do the weighted average for, because tackles, I can't believe tackles weren't a stat until the late 80s or early 90s.
Yeah, it was 1990.
That was wild to me.
They started recording.
But Singletary was a guy, as we mentioned, he played on such a scary defense.
Talk about, I mean, I just pulled them up really quick, not to cut you off, but
no, yeah.
In the 1985 playoffs, in the divisional round, they held the Giants to 0 points. In the conference championship, they held the Rams to 0 points. And in the Super Bowl against the New England Patriots, they held them to 10 points. And they were 15-1. This team was insane. I mean, and you know what's funny is they take defenses now and they're like, oh, well, this is the best defense in the state.
If you hold them to less than 20 points.
Yeah, and it's people forget just how good that defense was.
But now, think about, and I'm going to, I have to put my Jaguars in, I have to slip them in a little bit. Think about how good the 2017 Jaguar defense was, right? And they were dominant, right? Holding teams to 10 points, 14 points. And they averaged, I think, the defense averaged 14 points given up a game. And to me, that was otherworldly, right? Mm-hmm. Does it tell you how many points, their average points they gave up that year?
So I could just tell you what they did. So they actually ended up going 12. So they went 28 points, 7 points. Oh, it doesn't give you an average. 28 points, 7 points.
They gave up 28 points?
Yeah.
Did the game they lost?
And no, they won.
Really?
So 28-7, 24-10, 19-10, 7-9, 10-3, 0-0, 38. That was the first game they lost. Was against Miami.
Can you go from that stretch again from after the 24 game and up to the 38 game?
10-19-10, 7-9-10, 3-0-0.
Are you serious?
Yeah, that's insane.
So...
And they won one of the games. They won 44-0, 24-3, 16-10, 36-0.
So in a span of 4 weeks, in a span of 6 weeks, they gave up 22 points.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
And the only quarterback that they lost to in the regular season was Dan Marino.
Right. Well, who's an all-time great.
Yeah. So,
but Singletary, so that's how good the defense is. Think of how good Singletary had to be to win Defensive Player of the Year. So out of all those guys on that team, he was the alpha.
Yep.
He was the alpha.
Synonymous with that team.
And synonymous with that team. And even as a head coach, he's a hard-nosed guy. He's not afraid to get in your face. He smacks you in the mouth if you cross him. He's one of those vicious. I think when we talk about when we get to Ray Lewis, Singletary was Ray Lewis of the 80s. Yeah. I think he was a guy that you feared. You didn't want to cross the middle against because you knew you were going to get popped every time you came across the middle. And he was the captain of that defense. Mm-hmm. Just an all-time great, an all-time pro, part of the greatest defense ever assembled on a football field. Number 8, number 50, Mike Singletary.
And his raw score was 116.
Raw score is 116, 2 points ahead of Terrell Suggs.
So you want to take a little break? Quick?
We'll take a small break. I'm going to go drain the main vein. I'm going to have a sip of water. We're going to come back. When we come back, we're going to hit up number 7. We're going to go all the way down to number 1. BRB.
Hey y'all, Spencer Blinn, the producer for Perfect Spiral Podcast, and you're listening to my band Hollow Choir's new song, What You Want. Available now on Spotify. What you want?
All right, folks, and we're back here. About a 5-minute break. I had a, tinkle and winkle, as they say. So we are down to number 7. So numbers 11 through 8 so far. Junior Seau, Joe Schmidt, Terrell Suggs, and Mike Singletary so far. Number 7, John, hit us with maybe outside of Joe Schmidt, the most surprising name on this list.
So number 7 is Bobby Bell.
Bobby B.
With a raw score of 119. Now, Bobby Bell was an interesting one, so I want to actually pull up his numbers quick because I actually did quite a bit of research on him. Hang on.
Bobby Bell.
Wow, my phone is like having a stroke.
That's not good.
Yeah,
I don't want your phone to have a stroke.
Oh, no, I picked the wrong Bobby Bell. There's a Bobby Bell that played 2 years. No, we don't want that one. Okay, we want this Bobby Bell. Okay, Bobby Bell. I'm going to go through his accolades really fast. He's a Hall of Famer, 9-time Pro Bowler, 6-time All-Pro, 1-time Super Bowl champ, 2-time AFL champ, and part of the 90s Hall of Fame team. So Bobby Bell, when I was watching his tape, one thing that stood out to me was just how much he would be an All-Pro in today's game.
Oh, my God.
He would act like he was 6'3", 225. Way ahead of his time. This guy was unbelievable in coverage. He might be, out of all of these linebackers that we're going to go through, he might be the second best linebacker in coverage.
Really? You think so?
Yes, there is someone better than him. All over the field. Absolutely fantastic. And what's funny, a little fun fact about him, he was drafted by Minnesota and traded to Kansas City. Would have been a Minnesota great. And he was also the Chiefs' long snapper.
Interesting.
I put Chiefs long snapper, LOL, in my notes.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's
Did not
nuts.
know that.
But he was all over the field. I mean, if you go and look at some of his numbers, he has 26 interceptions in his career. A lot of his other stats. He was another guy that a lot of the stats were not covered. But when you're watching the tape, he was all over the field. Absolutely all over the field.
And he played on some good. Did he played on those Chiefs teams with Joe Montana in the later part of his career, or no?
No, he only played until 1974.
Oh, okay.
So he played from 1963 to 1974. He
played on the Hank Stram Chiefs.
Yes.
I see.
Yeah, back one, way ahead of his time. He would be fantastic now. He would slide right in to the league right now.
So if you had to compare him to a player today in the league, who would you compare him to?
That's actually, I have somebody in mind. So he was very thin built.
Okay.
But he was very chiseled. Like he was lean, but in great shape. Honestly, I would probably compare him to Darius Leonard.
Really?
When I was watching the video, it was very crafty, very shifty. Had a nose for the ball. I mean, Darius Leonard, we already know, could be an all-time great. The way his career is going already, but yeah, that would be my comparison probably.
Wow, that's interesting. I really like that how he did that just now. So
right off the cuff, we just
right off the cuff. All right, so I think that's number 7, Bobby Bell. Now, when we get to number 6, it's a name that we are very familiar with as football fans. But when you look at his accolades, he's not, they don't stick out at you. But the guy I'm going to talk about, number 6, is Ray Nitschke. I'm sure everyone knows the name Ray Nitschke if you're a football savant or, you follow the game for a long time. Nitschke played on the great Green Bay Packers teams of the late 1950s and the 1960s. Ray Nitschke was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1978. He was drafted in the 3rd round of the 1958 NFL Draft. He went to Illinois College, and he, his nickname was Wild Man. Imagine
Wild Man.
I love that. I love how the NFL reference has nicknames on it. Like, you just imagine going around the locker room, hey, Wild Man. Like Wild Man. I think of Rick Vaughn every time I see Wild Man. But
7-time champion.
That's what I was just about to get to that, right? He's in the Hall of Fame. He only went to the Pro Bowl once, 2 times. So get this, he went to the Pro Bowl once, but he was a 2-time All-Pro. Explain that to me.
Someone messed up there.
Explain that to me. So, but yes, he's a 2-time Super Bowl champion and a 7-time NFL champion. What? The man almost went a decade with winning. A decade. He had a career 25 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, 23 career fumble recoveries. And he played from 1958 all the way to 1972. He played in 11 playoff games with the Green Bay Packers, and he won titles in 1961, 62, 65, 66, 67.
Wow.
As well as 58 and 59.
That's insane.
I mean, he is synonymous with Green Bay Packer football. He is one of the guys, when you think of the Green Bay Packers all-time greats, you think of Brett Favre, you think of Aaron Rodgers, you think of Reggie White, you think of those guys. Ray Nitschke's part of that group. Ray Nitschke is a guy who, unfortunately I would love to see these older guys play in the NFL today. You know why I would love to see these guys play in the older NFL today? Because they would smoke these new cats. They would smoke these new cats.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Guys sitting out because their hand hurts or because they got to get cream on their
It was a
shoulder.
different game then, Joe.
These guys, talk about concussions. These guys got concussions that, screw it, I'm going to play. They lost a tooth, screw it, I'm going to play.
There's a player on this list that had no teeth.
Definitely a different game. And Nitschke was a guy who was just, talk about a guy, maybe not the best athlete on the field, maybe not the most feared athlete on the field at all times, but he was a complete player. We always have one guy that was super consistent on our list, right? Mm-hmm. I think this is our guy for the linebackers. Nitschke was super consistent during his tenure. He won 7 titles with the Packers. There's a reason Green Bay is called Title Town. Nitschke is one of those guys that made it Title Town. Ray Nitschke, number 6. John, we're at number 5. Who we got?
So this is our first real jump in the raw score. So Ray Nitschke was 121, and this player comes in with a 159 raw score. Number 5, part of the Steel Curtain.
The Steel Curtain.
Again, I just feel like we've spoken about these Steelers on every single pod so far with the Legend series.
Absolutely have.
And 2 of them are actually on this list. There's one more. Jack Ham comes in at number 5 with a raw score of 159.
Wow.
Jack Ham, I'll go through his accolades and I'll go through some of the stuff I saw on him. He's a Hall of Famer, 8-time Pro Bowler, 6-time All-Pro, 4-time Super Bowl champ, and part of the 90s Hall of Fame team. So Jack Ham, when I was talking about Bobby Bell and I was saying how I put in all caps on my notes, another Steelers great. When I was talking about how Bobby Bell was the second best player in coverage in this, like in our top 11, Jack Ham's the number 1 player in coverage at the linebacker position.
Really?
He might be the greatest cover linebacker in NFL history. I put so fucking good in coverage. Probably the greatest outside linebacker of all time. Always all over the field. He has the third most interceptions all time for a linebacker. And he's probably the most complete player that we're going to discuss.
Really?
Yes, because Jack Ham never had a bad game. When they were asking coaches, they asked what was his name? Bob? Not Bob. What was it? Who's Paterno?
Joe Paterno.
Joe Paterno.
Yeah.
He says that he's never seen Jack Ham have a bad game. Any player that's watched Jack Ham said he never had a bad game. Of course, another guy whose tackles weren't recorded, but he didn't miss games, man, until the end of his career, really. And then the playoffs, just absolutely fantastic. He's another player who I would say, like Bobby Bell, could do very well here. And I'm going to compare him to somebody in the league right now.
Oh, I like this. I like how you're doing this.
So, because now that you asked me with Bobby Bell, I'm going to compare a current Steeler to Jack Ham. TJ Watt.
Really?
So, TJ Watt is a complete linebacker. I mean,
yes, he gets to the quarterback.
He gets to the quarterback. He plays great coverage. Fantastic tackler. Very similar player. Very similar player in the respect that they are very complete all over the field. Watching him was watching his highlights was an absolute pleasure. I mean, he's just so smooth.
I listen.
And part of those great Steelers teams, we keep talking about them. We keep talking about players from these teams.
And you know what's funny? Like, you know, people might be listening and saying, "Oh my God, there's so many Steelers guys on these lists." Can I tell you, there's not one Steeler player that we have discussed so far that was not in the Hall of Fame.
They're all in the Hall of Fame.
Every single player we've discussed and even thought about, John Stallworth, Lynn Swann, Franco Harris, Mel Blount, Jack Ham, the other Steeler linebacker who we're going to discuss. I want to give it away. Every single one of them's in the Hall of Fame. Every single one.
Yep. They had amazing players on
when we
teams.
Get to the greatest teams of all time, it is going to be so interesting to decipher where that team, because that team won the Super Bowl 4 times during that decade, right? Mm-hmm. And we're not going to sit here and put all 4 teams on the greatest teams list. There may be 2, but how in the world do you say, off the cuff, just like, how do you say there is a team better than that had at least 10 to 12 Hall of Famers on their roster? A fifth of their rosters in Canton.
It's hard to say.
Like, that's insane. And not to mention, their head coach is in the Hall of Fame. Chuck Noll.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yep.
And you saying Ham might be the best the best cover linebacker of all time? That's a pretty bold compliment. That's a pretty bold statement.
Yeah, they had such complete players. I mean, they had.
And this is before free agency, right? So it's all about drafting.
Yeah,
they drafted all these guys.
And they had players that did their jobs perfectly at different positions.
It's very similar to like the Bill Belichick-esque, right? Like, do your job.
Yep.
You do your job. Like, you do this, you do that. If everyone does what they're supposed to do, we'll be fine. That's great.
So Jack Ham comes in at number 5 on our list with a raw score of 159.
Jack Ham. Number 4, okay, is a guy who, if you look at his numbers, he is like somebody who I was very surprised at how good he was. But he's another guy who played in the late 60s, in the late 60s and the 70s, played on a ton of winning teams, and was just very successful everywhere he went. And that is Ted Hendricks. Ted Hendricks played from 1969 to 1983. His nickname is the Mad Stork, okay? That may be the greatest nickname in football history, the Mad Stork. Inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1990. Drafted in the 2nd round by the Baltimore Colts. He's an 8-time Pro Bowler, a 4-time All-Pro, and he's a 4-time Super Bowl champion, John. 4-time Super Bowl champion. And he is one of the few I guarantee you, he's one of the few members on our list who is not on 1, but 2 All-Decade teams. He was on the All-70s team, and he was on the All-80s team, And he was on the All-80s team, and he only played in 4 years in the 80s.
Yep.
So think about how good he was from 1980 to 1983 to be on that team for playing less than half a decade.
Well, he was another one of those players, Joe, that was on those great Raiders teams.
Yeah, I mean he won a Super Bowl with the Baltimore Colts, I believe, in 1970. He was an All-Star from 1971 to 1974, and then he went to Oakland. He had 1 year in Green Bay in 1974 before he went to Oakland in 1975. And in Oakland in 1975, he played there through 79. And then, so he was an All-Star from 1971 to 1974. And then he took a break. And in 1980 to 1983, he was again an All-Star in those 4 years. And he was an All-Pro in 1980 and 1982. So he's a guy that played in every single game he ever played.
Yep.
Every single game. So in 1960, from 1969 to 1977, the NFL played 14 games a season. He played in 14 games every single year. In 1978, when the league went to 16 games, he played in every single game from 78 to 81. In 1982, there was a strike and they only played 9 games that season, or shortened season. And he played in every single game that year. And then he played in every single game in 1983 before he retired. So 26 career interceptions, 16 career fumble recoveries, 2 career touchdowns. They only started recording sacks in 1982. And he only have recorded sacks from 1982 and 1983. But he played 9 years in Oakland and Los Angeles, played 5 years in Baltimore, played 1 year in Green Bay, 21 career playoff games, won a Super Bowl in 1970, 1976, 1980, and 1983. So 3 with the Raiders, 1 with the Baltimore Colts. Here's an interesting fact about Ted Hendricks, John. Mm-hmm. He was never one and done in the playoffs. Always won at least one game.
That's incredible.
Always won at least one game. And every time he got to the Super Bowl, they won. Never lost the Super Bowl. Really unbelievable player. Synonymous with, like you said, some of the great Raiders teams of the 70s. Yeah.
That's another team that's going to be curious to see, like,
where they fall in.
Yeah, and how many players we've spoken about from those teams, because we've had quite a few of them already.
So the Mad Stork coming in at number 4. John, we're down to the top 3.
We are down to the top 3.
And I think the top 3 are amazing.
Unbelievable.
So maybe they might be some of the 3 of these guys, maybe the top 25 players in NFL history.
Yeah, 100%.
They may be that good. So hit us up with number 3.
So number 3, the personification of the Steel Curtain with a raw score of 161 is Jack Lambert.
Jackie Lambert!
So Jack Lambert was the Steel Curtain. He was the Steel Curtain. He was the man in the middle calling out all the defensive plays for those great Steelers teams. He might be arguably one of the most important players on that Steelers dynasty. He, again, another Steelers great. People thought when he came into the league he was too small. He was not. He had a very
He wasn't small.
He wasn't small. He had a very intimidating look to him. So when we're talking about how players are missing teeth,
oh, it's him?
He didn't have his front teeth. So when you're looking at him, and what made him so good was that they said he was too small, but he was always able to see where the running back was. So he always had almost like an advantage for like being small. It was very weird. He always knew where the running back was, and he was always in the backfield, tackles for loss constantly. Very smart player. Like I was watching some footage on him and like the way he was calling out where players were going. You know, people you got to realize that, like we were talking about Mike Singletary and how Mike Singletary was like the most important player on the 85 Bears. You know how good you have to be the most important player on 4 Super Bowl teams?
No.
To be like the Steel Curtain, like you are the man in the middle of the Steel Curtain. So I've spoken enough about him, but let me go into his accolades because it's impressive. So Jack Lambert's a Hall of Famer, 9-time Pro Bowler, 6-time All-Pro, 4-time Super Bowl champ. He's part of the 70s team and the 80s team, Defensive Rookie of the Year in 74, and Defensive Player of the Year in 1976. He was just, again, 8 fumble recoveries in 76, so imagine how many forced fumbles he had. Not bad in coverage himself, 28 interceptions in his career. But, it must be easy to do that with Jack Ham over there, too.
Absolutely.
But no, Jack Lambert was the personification of the Steel Curtain and rightfully deserves to be number 3 on our list.
So you say he's the most important player on all 4. Do you think he's the best player on those Super Bowl teams?
Defense wins championships. And if you are the man in the middle of that defense and you're calling out the plays, you are the most important player on that team.
Okay.
And when we talk about those Steelers teams, we talk about the Steel Curtain. We talk about the defense.
Right.
And he was the guy. He was the man that Chuck Noll entrusted with running that defense.
So if we could go back, okay? Now stick with me here.
Okay.
If we could go back and we could put the 1974 or 1975, whatever year they won, Steeler defense against the 2007 Patriots offense, who's got the upper hand?
Wow.
Do you want to table that? That's just like
no.
a little tease.
I want to answer this. Because this is a nice little something.
Now remember, the 2007 Patriots,
one of the greatest offenses of all
probably
time.
the greatest offense of all time. Brady, Randy Moss.
I think they would go toe to toe, but you know what's funny is I don't know if Belichick would have an offensive line scheme good enough to stop that defense. Like you got it. Like there wasn't just like we've been saying, there wasn't just Jack Lambert.
There's Mean Joe Green,
Jack Ham,
Mel Blount on the backside.
Like
Mel Blount's covering Randy Moss. That's amazing, right?
Yeah, there. Do the Patriots score 14 points?
What? You don't think they scored 14?
I mean,
Brady's a magician.
I mean, they scored 14 against that Giants team.
Shots fired. Oh, God.
I mean, let's be honest. They couldn't stop Strahan and...
You know what we got to do? Well, here's what we got to do. When the new Madden comes out...
the MVP edition.
When the new Madden comes out, I'm dead serious. We have to get it, and we have to simulate those games between... we should do like a bracket.
Oh, that'd be so cool.
When we do the all-time teams and we do the top 11, we'll add like a couple of teams in there. And we have to do like a simulated bracket. And we have to like live Twitch it so people could see it.
That'd be so fucking cool.
And we figure out who is the greatest team of all time. I think that's a great idea.
We just thought about that on the cuff.
I think that's a phenomenal idea.
That is a phenomenal idea. But yeah, do they score 14 points? I don't know.
That's tough. You just threw them under the bus hardcore just now.
I mean, they did only score 14 points against a inferior Giants team.
Wow. Shit. A lot of New York fans not going to be happy with that comment.
Can't spell a Lee without Eli. All right, go to number 2 before I get more people mad.
Number 2. So, lo and behold, through everything we've done, the last 2 on our list are Ray Lewis and excuse me, Lawrence Taylor. Now,
by the way, I just want to say this. I got a very mean text the other day.
Oh. No.
From our good friend Sean, who said that if Lawrence Taylor is not number 1 on the list, he is going to stop listening to the podcast. So,
wow. Sean, I have some news for you, my friend. You do not have to find a new podcast after this week because Ray Lewis comes in at number 2 on our linebacker list with a score of 162, 1 point higher than Jack Lambert. Ray Sugar Lewis, who defied all the odds.
Oh, that he did.
Defeated prison. Defeated the Giants. Defeated the 49ers. Defeated everything you possibly could.
One hell of a dancer.
One hell of a dance move is right. I think it goes a little something like...
Oh, Joe is doing it.
Oh, back, front, ah! That is the Ray Lewis dance move right there.
Joe just did that in flip-flops.
I did that in flip-flops. Phenomenal. Ray Lewis, obviously, to me, okay, you say Jack Lambert is the greatest, most important player of that Steelers dynasty, right?
Yeah.
To me, Ray Lewis, I want to make sure I say this right, is the greatest defensive leader to ever play the game.
I'll agree with you.
The greatest defensive leader to ever play the game. Talk about a guy who commanded a locker room. Talk about a guy who commanded respect from his opponents and his peer and his teammates and his coaches. This guy was, obviously, listen, I just made the prison joke a little while ago. But in all seriousness, guy was fucking scary on the football field. When he hit you, he hit you. Like, he did not care if you got up. He didn't care. He was a man on a mission. He was one of those guys. You talk about he had no friends on that field for those 48 minutes. He might have had friends. I'm sure he had friends outside the game, right? He had guys on the team who he was friendly with. If he played you, soon as that clock started ticking, you were not friends anymore. You were enemies, and he wanted to bury you. And that's the type of leader that you want on your team.
Yeah.
And it's just
52 was synonymous.
52 is will forever be synonymous.
Yeah.
Forever. Hall of Famer in 2018, recently 13-time Pro Bowler, 7-time All-Pro, 2-time Super Bowl champion in 2000 and 2012. All 2000s team, 2000 Defensive Player of the Year, 2003 Defensive Player in the Year. Ray Lewis had 31 career interceptions, which just seems like a lot for him. 3 career return touchdowns, 19 career forced fumbles, 20 career fumble recoveries, 41 and a half career sacks, so he wasn't really a sack getter. Over 2,000 career tackles.
Incredible.
In his, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. About his 16-year career. Played in 21 playoff games, 99 tackles for losses. Over the course of his career, he had only 4 years where he did not record 100 tackles in that season. And the most tackles he had in the season was 184 in 1997. So, Ray Lewis, I think, like I said, he was always vocal. He was always outspoken. And on a team where we already talked about Terrell Suggs, on a team where we have yet to, but will talk about Ed Reed, on a team with Haloti Ngata, on a team with all these other really, with Rod Woodson. He played on one of those teams. With all these guys. The guy that stands out every single season is Ray Lewis.
Yep.
And talk about a guy who went out into the sunset, won a Super Bowl in his last year in the NFL. That's how you know that some of these players are meant to be in Canton, right? Ray Lewis is a guy who, in my opinion, he's a top 25 player of all time. When you talk about the top players in NFL history, Ray Lewis is one of those guys that makes the top 25.
Yeah, there's so many people in this world that have a 52 Ray Lewis jersey. Right?
How did you not want a 52 Ray Lewis jersey?
Yeah,
and he had that cage helmet. It was like, oh my god.
And you know what's funny is he never let up. Like in his mid 30s, towards the tail end of his career, he almost had that 1 year. I think it was when he was 34. He was almost a Defensive Player of the Year. I think he got robbed of the award. I think he was that good. He is. Ray Lewis, man, what a fucking player.
Ray Lewis.
Didn't he play on a really good Miami team, too, in college?
Yes, Miami was sick when he played on that team in the 90s.
Was that the team with Frank Gore and... No.
I think Frank Gore was after that.
No, that was the Ed Reed team. That was Ed Reed, Frank Gore. Okay. But yeah, Ray Lewis. Now, Joe, really quick, before we get to 1, do you want to go through our 12 to 14 of who just missed the cut?
Yeah, actually, we did not do that, so that would be good. So 12 to 14. So 14... was Ricky Jackson, who was a guy who was on the Saints in the 80s and the 90s. And he was one of those players who was a very good down lineman, had a lot of sacks during his career, and was on a lot of top 20 lists, but on a lot of those lists just fell outside the top 10 and stayed true here as he came in at number 14. Number 13, Bill George, a player who played in the 60s and the 70s, came in with a raw score of 109, 1 point behind Junior Seau. Bill George. And number 12, who I really thought was going to make the list, and I was definitely disappointed. I'm not going to lie. I almost wanted to really screw with the rankings a little bit so we could get him in. But he literally fell a half a point short.
Yeah, it's sad.
Is Derek Brooks. The amazing talent on those early 2000 Tampa Bay Buccaneer defensive teams. Him and Warren Sapp were the leaders of those teams. And Brooks was absolutely phenomenal. A Hall of Famer in his own right. Came in at 109.5, literally a half a point shy
Junior Seau.
of tying Junior Seau.
Yep.
And if he would have tied Junior Seau, I would have said, let's put them both as tied for 11th. But Derek Brooks literally just missing the cut at number 12. John, we have made it to number 1. We are here. Let's count down number 11 to 2 really quickly again. Junior Seau at number 11. Joe Schmidt at number 10. T-Sizzle. Terrell Suggs at number 9. Mike Singletary at number 8. Bobby Bell at number 7. Ray Nitschke at number 6. Jack Ham at number 5. Ted Hendricks at number 4. Jack Lambert at number 3. Ray Lewis at 2. And number 1, the infamous, the ever worldly, the prison wealthy, the possibly greatest defensive player in the history of the game.
Lawrence Taylor comes in with a raw score of I lost it. It was like 184, right?
186.
186. So, really quick before I get into Lawrence Taylor, I just want to say how I think our algorithm has done a great job of identifying who the greatest player at each position is, because it just shows the disparity in our raw score. He's 30 points above Ray Lewis. Right.
Yeah, he was huge.
So
very high above.
And that's been like that with a lot of these guys. So I'd like to kind of see our top 11 of the all-time greats across all positions when this is all said and done. Right. To see where they fall. So let's go through Lawrence Taylor's accolades and then we'll discuss him.
Sure.
There's a lot to discuss here. Hall of Famer, 10-time Pro Bowler, 8-time All-Pro, 2-time Super Bowl champ, 1-time MVP. He's part of the 80s Hall of Fame team. He was the Defensive Player of the Year in 81 and the Defensive Rookie of the Year in 81. So he won Defensive Player of the Year in his rookie year. 1982 Defensive Player of the Year and 1986 Defensive Player of the Year. So 132 sacks in his career. Absolutely fucking dominant. So a little fun fact about Lawrence Taylor is he was in the same draft as Mike Singletary.
Really?
Yeah, Mike Singletary was drafted in the second round. Only linebacker ever named MVP.
That's incredible.
He might be one of the only players to win Defensive Player of the Year and Defensive Rookie of the Year in the same year. I think he is the only player. He changed the way teams schemed offensive blocking assignments, right? Because you couldn't put a running back on him. Because if he's pass rushing you, no running back is stopping him. He was in the backfield before you could even blink. And it's funny that we've been talking about Lawrence Taylor a lot lately, I feel like people who are into the NFL, because you see someone like Aaron Donald and you're like, wow, this guy is one of the most dominant players since Lawrence Taylor, which truthfully might be true. It might be true. But Lawrence Taylor was just an absolute fucking freak.
He was a beast.
Synonymous.
Literally beast.
Literally beast. He might be a top 5 great all time. All time. Across all positions. Top 5 all time.
I think so. Yeah, he might be.
Synonymous with New York Giants football. He played his entire career with the Giants. There's a lot with LT off the field, but On the field, he was just an absolute beast. Lawrence Taylor, number one.
LT, number one. The linebacker list is complete, John.
You said you had something for me before the pod. What
I
did
did. Well, with the linebackers now complete, we have to decide who we want to do next. You mentioned to me before the podcast that you were thinking about doing the teams.
Yes.
I was going to go one step further.
Ooh.
And unlock the gates of hell. Why don't we just go to the quarterbacks? Whoa. Why don't we just do the quarterbacks? I think we've waited long enough.
Yes. We've kept people waiting.
We've kept people waiting. This will be now the fourth position that we've completed. And we keep doing offense, defense, offense, defense. It's now an offensive turn. And I thought about doing tight ends, but I said, you know what? Let's really stir the pot here a little bit. Let's do the quarterbacks.
I wonder who's going to be number one.
Let's do the quarterbacks. And I really want to like this is going to be like the prime one, right?
Yes,
it's the quarterbacks. And I can't wait to discuss it because I think it's going to be a blast. So quarterbacks, you agreed?
I'm down with quarterbacks. Let's do it.
Quarterbacks next week, folks. You hate Tom Brady? Shit, sorry. You hate Peyton Manning? Shit, sorry. You hate Eli Manning? Well, you won't have to talk about him next week, so it's fine.
Second thing at the Giants on this episode.
So that will do it for this episode. It is Saturday afternoon. If you are here in New York, please get outside, enjoy the weather. It is absolutely beautiful out. We will come back to you hopefully next Thursday. My schedule has been so wacky this past couple of weeks.
It's been wild.
But we will definitely get it to you over the course of this week. If we don't do it on Thursday, we are usually good to do it on a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Which seems to be working out, which is nice. So, John, anything for the folks before we head out?
I got nothing, man.
Nothing. John is good. I am good. Before we leave, make sure I'm going to tell you one more time, follow, subscribe, download, review, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Deezer, Stitcher, Pandora. Anywhere you get your podcasts, our home Buzzsprout has been great. Make sure that you listen to us and tell everyone. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your neighbors, tell your dogs. We want everyone chirping and listening in and giving us their feedback. Guys, we haven't even hit the iceberg yet. We haven't. If we're the Titanic, we're waving. We're just taking off.
Yeah, we're just taking off.
FFA is around the corner. The season is less than 100 days away. Trevor Lawrence is less than 100 days away. Oh, I can't wait. For John McCarthy, it's Joe Miglio. PSP, out.